welcome. I am Daniel G. Garza, and welcome to another episode of Put It Together Conversations. Thank you for joining us. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I forgot there for a minute where we were. I want to welcome the new channel to our viewers, LinkedIn. We just joined you guys over the weekend. So if you're watching us on LinkedIn, thank you so much. For everybody else watching on any of the pages, you are welcome to be part of the conversation. Make sure that you are asking questions, being part of it. Make sure that you are in the dark version of the show. Let me make sure that everybody can see us here, because I know we were having some issues with one of the pages, but there we are. If you want to be part of the conversation, make sure you ask some questions, be part of it, get curious. Today, I am very excited because I get to have back Radiant Health Centers. We've done a couple of shows with them. For those of you that have been following me know that I am not just a client of Radiant Health Centers, but I'm also part of the board, and I have been the chair of the Client Advisory Committee for a couple of years now. And it's a privilege, and I'm very honored that they allow me to bring them into my show and be able to share some of the information that we have about them. It's not just HIV, we've expanded more than that. And in an effort to get that information to you folks, I'm going to bring some of the guests on. So first off, I'm going to bring Lischer over to the show. She is a mental health intern. Lisa, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing really good. How about you?
I'm good, good. So you were an intern. First of all, tell us like a little bit about your background, what brought you to Radiant, and how long you've been with the company.
Okay, so I am a student right now. I'm getting my doctorate degree in psychology, and I've been at this a long time. So I have my master's degree in marriage and family therapy, and then I started pursuing my doctorate. And about 2.5 years ago, I was assigned to a site, and it didn't work out. And then I ended up getting referred over to Radiant for an interview. And so much luck involved with that, because this has just been a place for me. I love being at Radiant. I love the environment. I love the work. I love everything I'm doing there. So I've been able to stay there. I've been here at Radiant for about 2.5 years now, and I love it.
So the world of nonprofit can be stressful, can be challenging. What keeps you?
The people, our clients, I would say that, and my coworkers too. It's just a really great environment, and when you feel like you're doing something helpful and positive for other people, I think that's helped me stay and be motivated to do good things.
What is it about mental health and that career that called to you and it keeps you around?
I've always loved talking with other people and learning about other people and helping other people whenever I can. And because that makes life a little bit easier when you have people around you that can, if you need someone to hold your hand, they can be there to hold your hand and walk with you a little on your journey. And yeah, and that's kind of the motivation when I'm working at Radiant, is that I want people to be supported, right? This is what Radiant does. We support people. And from a mental health aspect, that's been a big part of my work there, is to get support systems around people. And that's been a big focus of my work.
Connections between diagnoses and mental health. Do you, I guess my question is, like, somebody who has different diagnoses, like for instance, like me, somebody like me that has HIV and a cancer survivor, and is there a different way to approach the situation, or does everybody pretty much fall into a general pool?
Everybody's different. So it's really important for me as a therapist to understand your history, your background, and how you feel about your diagnoses and your history and what you've been through.
Cool.
And once I understand that, I can really help and try and have good conversations that will help open things up. So if you have a cancer diagnosis, but you haven't really dealt with it and you kind of shut that off to the side, maybe we need to talk about that a little bit, and kind of get it to where you're accepting that and you're not cancer, but it's just part of who you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. All right, so we have two more guests, so I'm going to bring them on. My next guest is Olivia Bassett, and she is a registered dietitian. And hi, Olivia. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I feel like okay. So I'm not gonna lie. As soon as I said dietitian, I'm like, I'm not gonna say what I just had for breakfast, and don't tell her what all you ate. But tell us what your background, what brought you to Radiant, and how long you've been with the organization.
Sure. And let me start by saying there is no food shaming here. If anything, actually, as a dietitian, I feel like I'm the one that people look at, like, what's in my cart? What am I eating? And so when I'm munching on cookies, they're always like, what are you doing? Anyway, but okay, so I've been at Radiant for 5 years this May, so I'm almost at 5 years. And I came here 5 years ago. It was kind of a change in my life. My current husband and I moved here 5 years ago from upstate New York. Quick turnaround. We kind of just both decided we wanted to move somewhere new and fun and exciting. We came to California, and within a week, I had joined Radiant. And what I looked for when I came here, I had been working in hospitals. I've been a dietitian for about 9 years. So I've been in hospitals, nursing homes, rehab facilities, outpatient, inpatient. So I had a really good experience in clinical, but I wanted to try nonprofit. I wanted to really work with a different community that maybe really wanted my help versus sometimes in a hospital, they don't always want your help when you're going in their room and they're feeling really sick, right? So Radiant kind of fell into my lap. It worked out really easily. The staff was really amazing. And I've had no thoughts of leaving because I love it here so much.
That's pretty cool. Do you find like right now, like it's hard enough for somebody with a diagnosis to pay attention? Like if somebody's newly diagnosed with HIV or something new, like sometimes food is the last thing. And I raise my hand because sometimes I'm like, are you kidding me? I have cancer. Like, why are you concerned about what I'm eating? But then you add to that everything that we've been through in the last year. How difficult or has it been to get the word out on watching our weight? Because I know mine has fluctuated so much for the last year. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, food is, I think of food in multiple ways of feeding multiple forms of hunger. So yeah, food is sometimes the last thing people think of. I've got this diagnosis. I'm taking these medications. I've got my mental health part, that I'm dealing with about this. So food is then the comfort, right? It's the thing that we do to make us feel better. So I always acknowledge that in all of my practice, that food is comforting. We often hold memories with food, makes us feel good in certain circumstances. And I don't always focus on weight. I believe as a dietitian, I try and help my clients have a really good relationship with food. So I look at the big picture, not necessarily what the number on the scale says or what anybody says you have to lose weight or you need to gain weight. We want to look at their whole health, how food plays a role in their health, if it makes them feel good, all these other things. So it's a really unique thing to work on with clients, I think. And I often find once they start working with me, they are intimidated at first, like, oh, I have to see a dietitian. But we often talk about way more than food, and they usually end up really enjoying it and looking forward to our appointments. I'd like to hope.
That's awesome. Yeah. Because I remember going through some of my original. We have Michelle Sherman, one of my favorite people, saying hi to us. Hi, Michelle. But yes, I totally understand. I was one of those people. I'm going to confess. I was one of the people when I was first like, you want to talk to a dietitian? I'm like, no, I don't want to go on a diet, but we're going to talk about that. It's so much more than that, folks. Mm-hmm. So no, if you're at home eating a cookie right now, finish your cookie, please. Let me bring on our next guest, Twyla Garcia Bagg, who is a mental health therapist. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. So tell us about you. How long have you been with the organization? What brought you here, and your title a little bit?
So I graduated back in August. I've been working at Radiant. It'll be 2 years in June. And what brought me? You know, when we were doing in grad school, they have this fair where you check out different internship sites. And before we even had the fair, Radiant was my number one choice. I was really passionate about working with the LGBT community. That was one of my populations of interest. And so even before the fair, I contacted our mental health director and asked her, you know, if there was any openings and if I could submit an application, and and then I ended up getting it and it went really well. So and now I'm here.
Nice, welcome. Well, I had some questions on me, but I see on our board we have some questions that already come in. So if you guys don't mind, so here's the first question that pops in: is that what do you guys find that stimulates appetite? And this, I guess, can be for everybody because it's both mental and physical, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Whoever wants to go first.
I guess I'll start. There's a couple of things that I've found besides medications. You know, obviously there are certain circumstances where medications can come in. But some natural things that I've learned with my clients is, so I'll just give an example. I like to look at when you first start eating in the day. So if your appetite is really the struggle and you might be going hours without eating, that kind of slows down that appetite anyway. So the earlier you start to eat, the earlier you find foods that look fun, they're very colorful, they have different textures, maybe they're cold or maybe they're hot, a variety of foods, but earlier in the day can help kind of wake up your stomach, wake up your digestion, and make you feel more hungry naturally throughout the day. So that's something that I find works very well.
Cool. How about on the mental side? Does the way we think of our bodies or our health or diagnosis have anything to do with appetite?
Oh, absolutely. Just speaking for myself, I always encourage my clients to exercise. That's like the number one protection against mental health disorders or illness. And so I would say for me personally, exercise is probably one of the best things. Let's finish my taco. Okay.
Yes, Martha, finish your taco. As anybody knows me for a long time, I respect the tacos, so please finish your taco. So we have another question on the board, and then I'll bring Lisa into this one. So the question here is, how would you start a conversation? This is for Olivia. How would you start a conversation with a client who is obsessed to a fault with her weight and what the scale says?
Yeah, I've been there. I've experienced that. And what I like to do in these circumstances is we really practice mindful, motivational interviewing. So I want to find out, I'll have a true discussion with you. Let's meet you where you are. Let's look as to why. Where did that come from? Where did that start? Looking back in your childhood, when did that start? So, the very first conversation is not going to be stop weighing yourself, just walk away. That's never going to be the answer. It's going to take a deeper dive into where that's coming from, connecting back to loving yourself the way you are and improving in ways that you want to improve, and how can I help you do that? So I'm not here to tell you what to do, what weight to be, who to be. I'm here to help you become your best self, whatever that might be. So if you want to lose weight, we'll help you in a natural, holistic, healthy, happy way, right? That's basically it. And I want to help people feel better. I want them to learn to love themselves. And a lot of this goes into mental health too. So I would absolutely then bring on a mental health department team member to help us with that.
Well, let me ask Lisa. So say, for instance, you're the follow-up to this conversation, to this client. I've been guilty too, especially having had, when I was diagnosed with AIDS, I was down to 108, 110 pounds. So now, sometimes when I start losing weight, I have that obsession. I'm getting sick, something's happening. So I start eating more, which then will like kick up my diabetes and my numbers. So then Lisa would come in and say, like, what would your input be?
So I'm more interested in like what's behind, I would call it maybe an obsession with weight or the scale, or what is behind that. Because obviously, say it was you would be putting some value behind weighing a certain amount or looking a certain way or something along that way. And I'm more interested in looking at your value system and, try and find another way to find value in yourself. right? Are you finding value in your appearance, or are you a valuable person below your appearance, right? What do you have? What are your internal strengths?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I'm curious about, and again, for everybody who's watching, let me remind everybody, you're watching Put It Together Conversation Special Edition with Radiant Health Centers, and we have some of the staff here with us today talking about mental health and dietary. And we're not really going to talk to you about diet, but we're going to talk about how that works when you have a diagnosis, which is really, I always like to put myself, especially in shows like this, as the example, because again, I'm a book. I'm an encyclopedia of diagnoses. And when talking about Radiant, and the foundation of Radiant has always been HIV and AIDS awareness. And for people who are HIV positive, when it comes to medications, when it comes to mental health, the way we eat, it all works together, right? Can we really separate it, or does it have to come together? Does that make sense? Anybody who wants to take the question? Let's go to Twyla.
I mean, I would definitely say that the two overlap. You definitely, getting any sort of diagnosis, regardless if it's mental or physical, I think requires a bit of processing and, kind of learning to accept it or have a better relationship with that diagnosis. And so I think it very much overlaps.
I would agree 100%. A lot of diagnoses come with some sort of potential nutrition challenge that might help them, or something they need to change or work on, not always, but sometimes, which is a behavior change. And then that behavior change requires some work on, the mental health part of it too. How do we make that behavior change? How is that going to affect other parts of our lives? So I think it absolutely goes hand in hand.
Lisa, how important is knowing backgrounds, and does it matter? Cultural, religious, social, economic backgrounds. How does that come to work with all that?
I find it very helpful for the type of work that I do with my clients. I want to know your motivations and what's brought you to where you're at right now. How can I help you fix something that I don't understand the origin of? That's where I kind of come from. However, if you have a problem like I'm biting my nails, I might not need to know your whole childhood experience to help you stop biting your nails. So it just depends on what you're coming in with. But I find most times it does help to kind of talk about things from the past.
Gotcha. We have another, this is a big question. How do you all as a team address a client who may be reporting different things to different staff? Like they tell Olivia they're eating well, but report to the therapist unhealthy eating habits. That's a big one. I'm not going to lie. I've done that. I've done that mainly because I'm not going to lie. Not to you, not to you guys. Not here. No, not here. But I remember, and I'll set this an example. I remember when I was going through cancer that my dietitian there was very big on me eating all these big foods, but I wasn't able to keep them down. So I would lie and be like, yeah, of course I'm eating. No, I'm great. But then I would go to mental health and they would weigh me and they're like, you're eating well, but you're losing weight. How is that happening? How do you guys handle that communication between y'all?
Mm-hmm.
Or the question, yeah.
So
from
go ahead. No, go ahead.
From a mental health perspective, we're very confidentiality is a big thing in working with our clients in mental health. So from our perspective, it's really important to maintain that confidentiality. So you come to me and you tell me, what do you tell me? You're not eating anything, but you're telling Olivia that you're eating fine, you're eating all the food. I would get your permission and try and encourage you to kind of be more open and honest with Olivia and working with her and how it would benefit you. But from a therapist perspective, I really can't go and talk to Olivia and say, oh, guess what's happening, right?
Right.
Unless you give me permission, unless we have authorization from you where we can sit down as a team and work. And that's always better, I think, if we can communicate. If I can go and talk to Olivia and say, hey, what's going on? And then I can help you, going into a therapy session. That's the best. But from a mental health perspective, we're very cautious of confidentiality.
Yeah.
Twyla, did you want to add something to that?
No, absolutely. I was going to say the same thing. I mean, there have been plenty of instances where clients tell you something and then tell a different staff member something else. And so, confidentiality is number one. And all you can really do is hopefully encourage them to make the best decision for themselves. Because at the end of the day, all that matters is, keeping you healthy and safe. And so, yeah, encouraging them to do what's best for their health is probably number one.
Got it. And then Olivia, when they finally come to you and they're like, okay, we need the, sometimes we are held back by shame or embarrassment. Like, no, I don't need food pantry. I'm fine. I'm good. Like, how easy or difficult is it for you to be able to help somebody in that situation?
I just, my method is you had mentioned you had a dietitian before that would tell you to eat all these things, right? In some circumstances, they say, what do I eat? Tell me what to eat. Help me. I'll do it. In other circumstances, we really kind of what Lisa had mentioned, I really try and emphasize their person. So, wow, you really value your family. Wow, you really value your health. Wow, you are really committed to improving your appetite or something along those lines, so that the little habits of things that may go differently day to day don't matter as much. They're still great people. They're still always great people. And that's what I try and do is I try and make it not scary. I try and make it so that it's not so much pressure. I just want them to have a good time learning about themselves and their health and knowing, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have had that, but I had a great time while I did it. So we look at the positives.
That's, I love putting myself in the spot, and because it is coming in with the diagnosis into a space, and like for instance, when the first time that I came to Radiant, and for those of you, I came to Radiant the first time 12 years ago as a client out of Texas, didn't know anybody, but all I wanted, like really, like you walk in and you're like, okay, all I need is a doctor, my medications, and my dentist, and I'm good. Like I'm walking out the door. Like no, I don't need to see a therapist. I'm fine. But as a Latino man, proud, like I don't need a therapist. I got it all myself. And then once we get that, because they do convince you at some points, no, it's not a cult, people, but there is a point where like, hey, look, this service is available. And at some point you find yourself as a client going, well, maybe I need to talk to somebody. So I'm going to put this I'm going to play devil advocate for a second for the therapist. So as me walking into the therapist, go, well, wait a minute, you're a white lady, Lisa. How are you ever going to understand what I'm going through? Twyla, you look young enough to be my daughter. How can you possibly help me with any of my problems? Have you encountered a situation like that? And for the clients or the people that are watching, how do you make sure that they get the treatment that they need?
It's a great question. I don't know if I've quite come across that yet, although I will say that I've had quite a few clients who they see my last name and they're like, oh, she's Hispanic, thank God. But at the same time, I understand too that a lot of minority groups, they tend to experience discrimination or bias, and so you have to keep that in mind when you're seeing your clients, especially for the first time. But usually I just, I kind of tell them what my take is on the mental health care system here. And I think a lot of the times just normalizing and validating their experience really helps them to open up. But for me, I haven't quite come across that yet, surprisingly, because a lot of our clients tend to be a little bit older than us. But so that's my answer for that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Lisa?
We have, through our training and our education, we have a lot of training on diversity and how to work with a variety of clients. So that's kind of pounded into our head in our training programs. So for me, it's just been about understanding the client, who they are, where they come from, what is their culture, what is their ethnicity, how does that influence and impact their life day to day. And so having that awareness and that opening and making sure that I let my clients know, talk to me about this. I want to understand where you're coming from, because really everyone has their own history and their own story that's unique to them aside from their culture. So I want to understand all parts. How can I help somebody if I don't understand their experiences? So that's where I come from with
Gotcha. And I do want to at this moment say that we did talk about this. So what I'm about to say, people are like, "Oh, how dare you?" No, we talked about this beforehand. Lisa is my therapist, and the reason I bring that up is just to let you guys know out there watching this who are clients at Radiant or are looking for services and want to come to Radiant, that the diversity does work. Like that inclusion is part of the heart of Radiant Health Centers. When Lisa and I were matched up, I did have my hesitation. I was like, is she gonna understand actually what I'm going through or where I'm coming from? And we've been working together, and she's definitely helped me through a lot of things. We're still I'm a work in progress, people. Leave me alone. But the main reason I wanted to bring this up is to let you folks know who are watching this, who are clients or potential clients or are looking at Radiant Health Centers for services, that you are going to be paired with the person that is going to help you. So look beyond the package and value their knowledge and experience and education that's going to help you along the way. So just overlook that.
And I want to add on to that. Not everybody is meant to work together too. So if you're in a therapy room and you feel like you're not being heard or you're not understood, maybe it's just not the right therapist for you. Maybe you need to be reassigned to somebody else, or you would benefit from that.
That's okay.
Just like in the real world, we aren't friends with everybody, right? We're friends with people that we mesh with, and therapy room is exactly the same.
Now, one of the great things about Radiant Health Centers is there's groups available too. So one of the cool things is that you can join one of the support groups and get to know the therapist a little bit better. One of the great things, and this is why I kind of requested Lisa on the side. So yes, I'll let your ego get boosted, Lisa. I was able to join a couple of different support groups and be in the group and talk. And I watched the way she worked, and I listened to the kind of advice and suggestions she gave. And I was like, that's the kind of person that I need to work with. I need somebody like that. And for those of you that have been watching the show and following me well, I always throw sarcasm in the middle. So I needed somebody that was able to catch that, see it for what it was, and then return the words that I needed to hear. Because not everybody has a sense of humor. So I needed not here, not here, not here, not here. We have another question on the board, if you guys don't mind. How do you manage clients' shame when their diagnosis or having the need for Radiant services, Radiant Health Services? How do you manage shame with your clients and their diagnosis?
That's a great question, because I feel like I see that frequently with clients, not always, but frequently. I think when you first get a diagnosis, it kind of feels like that's who you are. And I think that's where that shame comes in, right? How did I let this happen? Or why me, right? How did that happen? And through therapy, we kind of work on, that's not you, right? That diagnosis is not you. It's a part of who you are. And whether you choose to share that with other people is up to you. But you're different. You're not the diagnosis. You are you, right? And who is that? Let's talk about that. And how can we mesh those two things together? You don't have to reveal your diagnosis to anybody if you don't want to. I mean, there's certain people you probably should, but I don't walk around talking about my asthma all the time. But are you?
I agree with Lisa 100%. That's kind of, you want to help differentiate the client from their diagnosis. I mean, just because you have a diagnosis doesn't mean you are the diagnosis. And I think a lot of the times when we get those diagnoses, we kind of feel like we're in this box. And so I guess helping the client come to a place of seeing like, I'm more than just that. And then, maybe if they don't know, help them figure out what that might be.
Yeah. And for everybody watching, it is, as an advocate, and I've been an advocate for 20 years, it does get stressful to know that the numbers still increase and that there's people still being diagnosed with HIV. But you're not, as somebody who's been with this for 20 years and has kind of made a career of being positive, you're not your diagnosis. You're not that label. You're not a number on an application or a medical form. You're way more than that. So if you are, and I'm going to use the word stuck, if you're stuck in, I'm HIV positive, I'm HIV positive, then yes, you will live in that space for as long as you want. You have the key to get out, and let mental health specialists help you get out of that, if that makes sense. Now I want to go back to food a little bit. I'm not obsessed with food, but let's talk about diet. Your job, because we kind of talked about it a little bit in one of the questions. Mental health does have some connection to food, and again, I'm going to put myself on the spot. I suffer from anxiety. I can get into the depression really quick, especially if I feel like I haven't completed a task for the day or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And then I'll punish myself. I'm like, nope, you're not going to have lunch until you finish this. And then by the time I realize it's like in the evening and I haven't anything to eat. And then of course I get more depressed and more anxious. Olivia, do you have I know there's not a quick solution, but what's that balance? Do you know? Can you give us any? Does that make sense?
I think that it comes down to, food is, I'm going to use this term loosely, but food is medicine in a way that it can help you with mental health issues, with medical issues. There's definitely evidence that food can make those symptoms worse and better. We all deserve to eat. We all need to eat, right? So when I work with people who might do that, so say they, I can't eat until I do this, or I don't deserve to eat now because I ate then. So we definitely would look into that and try and go back to, yes, we do deserve to eat all the time, every day. And just working through that. It's not a simple question. It's not a simple one session, we resolve it. But that is what the root is that we always need it and it can help. So day by day, for example, minute by minute, it doesn't have to be, I ruined this day because I had a donut for breakfast. It's minute by minute, choice by choice. So you had a solid lunch, you can have a solid dinner, or you can go out with friends and have maybe something that fuels your soul, right? You have soul food and makes you feel good. And then there's food that helps you in other ways. So it's all nourishment. Yeah. And so that's what I really try and help.
And how many of us didn't grow up with our parents going, nope, eat all your food, or you're not going to have that until you finish. And somehow, I'm 50 years old and I still hear my parents in my head, like, nope, you can't have that until you finish your homework. It's like, somebody, yes, I definitely, no. That's why I said I didn't think of another word, but no, you're not stuck there. Of course not. They say make them look, makes it look bad. Yeah. They recommend saying I tripped on myself. I've never heard that term. Have you folks? Have y'all heard that term before?
Yeah.
No, but I like it.
But thank you so far for saying that. I tripped on myself. I'm going to use that. That might be the title of this episode. I tripped on myself. Here's another question from the board. How do you manage a client who is showing the characteristics of compulsive overeating, bulimia, and/or anorexia, or all three? Wow, that's a big combo.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to go first.
I'll start by saying that there are dietitians who specialize in eating disorders, and there's also mental health providers who specialize in eating disorders. So if I see someone who's displaying these characteristics, I usually will refer them to someone who's trained in that area and can help them with those needs, especially combining mental health and nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to connect this a little bit more to HIV services. And does a diagnosis in times affect any of these three things?
In my experience, I don't know if I've seen that quite yet. I could see maybe, getting that diagnosis and feeling depression and not wanting to eat. I could see how that could impact, caloric intake, but I haven't quite come across that yet.
Yeah. Gotcha. I have not either.
Yeah, from a mental health perspective, I agree with Twyla that how you process the diagnosis, right? If it makes you depressed, that will affect your eating and so forth like that.
Gotcha.
So it's adjacent.
Yes.
Do any of y'all ever refer somebody to a 12-step program?
Absolutely. especially if they're struggling with substances.
Yeah, 12-step programs aren't for everybody, but if they work for a client, it can be a really good, another resource for a client who's working with me in therapy is to go to 12-step and get perspective and support specific to that, whatever that issue is that they're struggling with.
And I have a comment for that, but before we go on, I want to remind everybody you're watching Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. Today, my guests are staff from Radiant Health Centers, and we're talking mental health and nutrition a little bit and how to feed your body and your mind. So make sure that you are part of the conversations. Post your question, and I will make sure that they get it. I was talking about the 12-step program. There's a connection in my story between being diagnosed HIV positive and addiction. And a lot of people forget that. Some folks, and I've known some folks who, after the diagnosis, will fall into drinking more or using drugs. Have you seen that connection? Am I the only one I'm sure I'm not the only one that sees this, but what is your thoughts on that connection and how it happens or how to stop it?
I don't know if there's necessarily any way that you can stop that. I think I also work at a detox facility, and a lot of the clients that we have are addicted to some pretty intense substances. Most of the time, though, I just see it as people coping in the best way that they can, and maybe sometimes you weren't shown or modeled how to cope. And so usually when I come across individuals who are struggling with that, I try to kind of encourage them to try other types of coping and try to help them build up other areas of their life so they don't feel as though that they can't deal with these issues. And usually it's trauma. It's always trauma.
Lisa?
Yeah, I think that drinking or using substances can be a way of coping, of attempting to cope with something and trauma, right? It's usually not the most effective way. So working in therapy, we can help you find better ways to cope with what you're feeling and process through what you're feeling, right? Avoidance is one way of coping, but it's maybe not the best way of dealing with things, right? So
yeah, one thing that I found for everybody watching and listening to this, I am clean and sober now. So I'm hitting 14 years in June, knock on wood. But thank you. I definitely believe, as Twyla said, there was already some trauma there that when I got my diagnosis, and it made me because I was diagnosed with AIDS when I was diagnosed, and I was like, I'm gonna die. So if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna go down it in fire. I'm gonna go in flames. Let's party down, people. And then when they're like, you're actually doing well, I'm like, okay, well, let's rethink this whole drug and alcohol thing. So for anybody watching, yes, I'm not a mental health therapist, and I'm only a client. But if you are stuck in an addiction, there is a way out of it. My personal view on me is I had to stop using my diagnosis as an excuse to feed my addiction. And once I did that, my whole life changed. Does that make sense to you guys?
Absolutely.
All right. Here's a good question. How can you tell if you're depressed or just not feeling good for some time?
that's a good question. Because I always tell people life is like this, right? Sometimes you're going to feel a little down. Sometimes you're going to feel happy. It's just when the down gets to be a long period of time. That's when being just a normal on a downside becomes a little bit more of depression, clinical depression. And it's helpful to reach out for help when you notice that, right? So usually if you're feeling really, really down for more than 2 weeks, that's a good indicator that you may want to reach out for some help. And it doesn't have to be like long-term help. It can just be for a few weeks till you're feeling better. So, right, therapy can be what you want it to be.
Gotcha. Twyla?
Couldn't agree more with Lisa. I would definitely also maybe look at how your mood may be impacting other parts of your life. So, maybe you're not doing what you typically like enjoy like pleasurable activities. That's the biggest one for me. If you're not engaging in your leisurely activities, you know, maybe there's something else going on there. And if the depression's been there or the low mood has been there for a couple weeks, you might want to ask for help.
Now, one of the things that I'm also check my box, stress eating. I'm gonna bring Olivia into this part. There are times, especially like as COVID was coming in and we were on lockdown, and like stress eating for me was the big thing. And I'll admit, I said this at the beginning, I'm a big taco guy. And it's that point where, and if you're Latino and watching this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like you have those refried beans on the stove, you have the fire, and you're cooking that tortilla, and you don't even make it to the table, and you're munching on that taco. But one taco good, 5 tacos in an hour, that may not be so good. So how does food play into our mental health? And I know we asked this a little bit, but I'm going to talk about stress eating and the importance of addressing that, Olivia.
Yeah. And it's something I think we all experience. So we all have our own take on what's helped. But for me, what I do, you know, the first step in that is kind of what you said, acknowledging the stress eating. So being aware of when it's happening. Because there's been times when I'll sit and I'll have some box of crackers and then the crackers are gone. Like, where did they go? I was not aware that that is what I was doing. You know, your heart's beating, you're nervous, you're anxious, and you're just doing it. So the first step is just to acknowledge, ooh, I'm stressed right now. And this food is giving me comfort for whatever reason. But if that's not the goal, if the goal is not to stress eat, what can we do instead? So taking a look at, what is it happening in that moment? Are you feeling, and this is where the mental health can come in too, and I have some techniques I'll help. So with, you know, if their heart's pounding or they're feeling anxious, we might discuss, you know, breathing exercises or going for a walk, or maybe that's a good time to do your exercise. Making sure that the choices they're making, when they're aware that they're in the moment, I'm going to have one taco and then I'm going to go for a walk. And then if I want more when I get back, I'll have another one. You know what I mean? So you're just kind of working through that and being aware. Gotcha.
Yeah, because I know that, again, y'all are probably going to walk away from going, Garza, how do you exist? I know I'm an encyclopedia of problems, but that's what makes me a good subject. Y'all should all be working with me. Let's just say that. I'll be the subject. But I think going back to Radiant Health Centers, and for those of you who are going Radiant Health Centers, it used to be HR's Foundation. So if you know HR's Foundation, the new name is Radiant Health Center. So make sure when you Google that. But having started out in HIV and having diagnosis over diagnosis, like kind of piled on top, can definitely take a toll on a person. I know it did on me. For somebody that comes in to mental health and has that burden on them, what would be the first thing that you would chisel at? If that makes sense. Is that a loaded question?
No, not at all. I think definitely letting the clients tell their story, their narrative is really important. And not only does it give you time to get to know them, but you also kind of see how they're processing that information based on how they're relaying that to you. But I think for me, definitely the first step is going that direction. I'm very client-centered, very narrative. So that for me is just kind of building that rapport and trust and validating and normalizing their experience, I think is really important in the beginning.
Cool. Did you want to add something, Lisa?
Just in working with clients over the years, I know a lot of clients really are attached to ASF, right? That was really important to the clients. And so you'll still hear clients refer to Radiant as ASF because that's their place, right? That's their safe place in the world. And so we do want to maintain that going forward too. That's hopefully not going away, right? We're maintaining that HIV safe place for our clients.
Cool. Yeah, because for those of you watching, yes, when I came into the chair of client advisory committee, the name had already changed, and I still hear HR's Foundation. You're not wrong. It's still the same place, Plus. It's kind of like Disney Plus or Paramount Plus. Yes, it's AIDS Services Foundation Plus. It's Radiant Health Centers now. So all the services that you were used to when it was AIDS Services Foundation, plus some more. So you can still come and get your food pantry. You can get your doctor's appointment. You can get to a therapist. You can get connected to all kinds of services. There's still the children's programs. There's seniors programs, the LGBTQ plus programs. There's even special programs that have been opening up for Latinos, Latinas who are trans, and there's all these things. So it's AIDS Services Foundation Plus. It's just under a new name, but we still want you to come back. So if you were a client of AIDS Services Foundation and you stepped away because you thought there were too many changes, yes, there were changes, but there were changes made for you. And unless you step up and check out what the changes were, you won't know what you're missing out on. So please come back and check us out. We're coming down to the last 15 minutes. So if you're watching the show, this is Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel Garcia, and my guests today are some of the staff from Radiant Health Centers. I don't want to end the show without asking each one of you, and I'm going to start with Lisa. We've been talking about taking care of other people, and that's what we do in nonprofits. It's always about the people. But Lisa, how do you self-care?
That's really important. That's really important for everyone. So, and in my education too, they really pound that into us because it's really important that we take time and breaks for ourselves. And so I have those times when I'm like, my calendar is shut and it's my day, or I'm going to do something I want to do for me, spend time with my family, or I love getting my toes done. So that's like a treat for me. And I make sure I do that because it's important. I schedule that into my schedule every month. So it's important to take care of yourself and focus on yourself and being good to yourself.
Olivia?
Yeah. I think what I do is very important, and it's hard to take that time for yourself when there's a whole list of things that we could be doing. So when I try and think of what do I truly want to do right now. So not what, people are telling me you should meditate. I'm going to do something that really fills me right now. So I like to paint. I'm an artist too. So that kind of takes me away from everything for that hour, and then you go back. So it's just whatever works for me to clear my mind. Otherwise, I'm always thinking about everything. So something to take me away. A good book, love to read.
Yes.
Awesome. Twyla?
For me, I would say I have a couple. I'm also a painter. Painting and exercise are my two main vices, I would say. But definitely also being able to check in with yourself and knowing what you can and can't do in the moment. Just kind of like what Olivia was saying, setting, and Lisa as well, setting time for yourself, but also knowing when to stop for the day. If it's 9 o'clock at night, and maybe that's a good stopping point. Maybe you need like an hour or two to kind of decompress. So definitely boundaries is really important as well, not just with others, but with yourself.
Mm-hmm. I will admit that I'll tell you that is one thing that I'm working on, not because my therapists are here in the room, but there's something that I work on. I am horrible at setting my own boundaries. I'm a horrible boss to myself. I'm like, Garza, you can't leave yet. There's work to do. How dare you? You don't have a life. Get back on that desk. Here's another question. So are the programs open to all or only people with HIV or AIDS?
So we mainly serve individuals with HIV or AIDS, but we also serve the LGBT community. So it just depends. I also have clients that are not part of the LGBT community that we also serve as well. It just really depends on where we get the referrals from and what the needs of the clients are.
Here we have an answer from Amanda, who is also part of the staff. Services are for clients with HIV and AIDS, but also we have some specific to the LGBTQ community who are not HIV positive. For people who are HIV negative, we have therapy, support groups, and testing. Thank you for that, Amanda. We're down to the last 10 minutes. I want to make sure that if there's anything that you wanted to particularly say about Radiant Health Centers, your services, Lisa, anything that you want to add? This is your moment to put yourself out there.
I want to promote our mental health groups that we have at Radiant Health Centers. was about a year and a half ago. I mean, we had mental health groups before, but I wanted to focus my year on mental health groups and facilitating that, because I think it's really important to find community and people that you can relate to. And so I started the 55 plus mental health group, and it became like a community where people came and everybody was HIV. So you didn't have to worry about talking about that. And it was a really safe environment, and people became support systems for each other, and real friendships developed. And one thing that I really was happy with is that when the pandemic set in and we all had to kind of stop groups and be home, the group members communicated with each other and became a support system in that environment. Whereas if that group hadn't happened, I don't know that they would have had each other around. So it's really, really important to find that community, and Radiant Health Center's groups are really a good resource for that. So we do have mental health groups online and that go through Zoom right now. And I do 2 groups, and then there's a whole other bunch of groups every day with different topics, different areas that they're focused on. And I would encourage everybody to check those out.
Olivia?
Yeah. Wow. I do think the mental health groups are huge right now because everybody's in need of that support group. We all need that. But I want to say that for anyone who's out there who's not part of Radiant, I think, and I know that coming to Radiant, you will meet the most caring people, you can, to help you through anything you're going through. We have so many services. For what I do, anyone who's struggling with having food, we all deserve food. There's no shame there. A variety of things. We have meals. We have a medically tailored meals pilot program for anyone who has specific diseases like diabetes or cancer or kidney disease. We have meals tailored to that for those who can't cook. So there's so many opportunities services too that we provide that maybe just they don't know about. So I really welcome anyone to reach out. I promise that you'll be given a warm hand in and passed on to anybody who can help you. It's a really great place.
And Twyla?
Well, dang, what am I supposed to say now? They just said they hit it all.
They hit it all. How dare you? This is your
guess-
chance to anything that we haven't talked about.
Yeah. Well, I would just say, I guess a lot of the population that we serve, I think, has experienced a lot of bias and stigma. And so I guess my encouragement would be to come, and I promise that at Radiant that you will not experience that. It's a very emotionally corrective experience, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with the services and the staff.
Awesome. We have about 7-8 minutes to go before we end, but how did the lockdowns affect services and the way you were providing services? Let's go the other way this time. Twyla, you want to start this time?
Yeah, I think individually, I didn't see too much of a difference personally, but for groups, definitely, I think a lot of the clients were kind of uneasy about being on Zoom and having to look at themselves. That can be a little anxiety provoking. But I would say in terms of services, I think the only thing I saw a big difference in was in the groups in terms of attendance. But we've definitely got to a better place now than we were a year ago.
Olivia?
Yeah, I used to work with people face to face or go to their homes. And so we can't do that anymore right now. So we're doing everything over the phone, which a lot of my clients like because they can be in the comfort of their home. They don't have to worry about battling with traffic and things like that. And for the pantry, it stayed open. It's still open. If you're not comfortable coming in to pick up food from the pantry, we have ways to get it to you by volunteer delivery or with Lyft rides in if you don't have a way to come in. So we are really doing everything we can in that aspect to keep it the same.
Cool. Lisa?
And yeah, with therapy, as far as where we provide or how we provide therapy, that's obviously major change. So we still provide the therapy we provide, but it's now by phone and by video. So we have those options. And I could see us actually going forward, depending on the insurance companies, if providing teletherapy in the future. That's a really good option for a lot of our clients. And I'm think that's going to be one of the good things that does come out of this pandemic is the increase in teletherapy that we're going to be able to offer our clients, ones that are homebound or have trouble getting in to the office.
Cool. And I want to thank Amanda Peraza, who helped put all this together. And she said, forgot to the Reconnect program, case management for seniors who are 60 plus and part of the LGBTQ community. So see, folks, we've got you covered. What you got a box? We'll check it for you. We got it. And I want to say, from the client advisory committee part and from the clients, I want to thank you folks for everything you do. We understand, and I know some clients don't always, but for the most part, we understand that things got tough over the last year, that connections and communication, and yes, a lot of us, okay, not me, a lot of us liked the one-on-one. I want to come to the office and I want to be around people. I suffer from a little bit of anxiety, so no, I don't want to be around a lot of people. But one of the things that really has helped, and this is why I think therapy has worked so well for me, is that I am on my couch at home with my cup of coffee talking to Lisa on the screen, and we can have that interaction. And I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything that therapy has to offer, along with the ugly cries that come sometimes. We can't show those on television because they're too ugly to show. But for some of us who suffer from that little bit of a social anxiety, it is really cool to be able to be at home and go, I can still get the services I need without having to be there. And then my regular life is always busy. I'm always driving. I'm always going. So to not have to be, because let's face it, anybody who lives in Southern California knows that an hour visit is not an hour visit. It's an hour plus the driving, plus stopping to get something at the store, and drive through at Starbucks, whatever. So for some of us, it has been a release. But I know that for some of you watching or listening, you're like, I want to be there. We'll get there again. We'll get back to that. There'll be, just make sure that you do everything you possibly can do to stay safe, and you will be back in the office again. Any last comments before we leave, ladies?
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. This has been fun.
Thank you. I don't want to leave without saying, hold on, let me put up where is it? Here we are. There we go. That's where you can go to check out all of the information for Radiant Health Centers. If you have any questions, any doubts, make sure if you are watching us on Facebook and you're watching this on a replay, still ask your questions, make a comment. I will see those and make sure that they get to the right person. Whether you want to know anything about mental health or any dietary questions, I will make sure they get to the right person. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, please still continue to ask the questions. And we are so grateful to be on this new channel with LinkedIn. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, would you scroll down and subscribe to the page and maybe like the video and ask a question? I can still get those, and I'll make sure they get to the right person. And on Twitter, we'd really appreciate if you just retweet this and show it off and tag us on there to make sure that people get it. We want to answer any questions you have. If you are HIV positive and are not receiving services anywhere, please get in touch with us so we can connect you to the right person so you get the service that you want in Orange County, California. If you are HIV negative but are curious about getting tested and want to know your results, or you're LGBTQ and you want to access services somehow, get in touch. We can find you. Right now, there are testing. There's a drive-through testing at Radiant Health Centers. So you can actually drive through, stay in your car, and get tested. I know this because I just saw it on their Instagram this morning. So go follow them on Instagram. Go check them out at Radiant Health Centers and then follow them on Instagram, and you get all kinds of updates on what they're doing. So I know because I checked. So you need to go check them too. So please follow us here. For now, I want to thank Lisa and Olivia and Twyla for being on the show. You guys were awesome. Thank you for all the information. For everybody out there, please continue to watch us, continue to follow us. And again, if you have any questions, stay in touch and follow radianthealthcenters.org. Thank you, ladies, for being on the show. Don't go away anywhere. Let me just say goodbye to everybody. We have one more comment before we go. They got mad at me because I forgot to put the last comment the last time. Thank you guys for your time and wisdom. Until next time. Thank you, Safar. Thank you, sir. Don't go away, ladies. We'll be right back.